Imagine this. You sit down to work. Your laptop is open, your coffee is still warm, and your to-do list is sitting right there, waiting. You tell yourself, just 1 minute. I'll check my phone, and then I'll start. 3 hours later, you've somehow watched 20 videos, answered 0 emails, and the one task you needed to finish hasn't even been touched. Your coffee is cold now. So is your motivation. Here's the strange part. You're not lazy. I know that's what it feels like at 2 in the morning when you're staring at a blank document, but it's not true. What's actually happening is that your brain has quietly decided your task is far bigger and far more dangerous than it really is. And before this video ends, I'm going to show you why spending exactly 2 minutes on something can completely rewire how your brain responds to hard work. It sounds too simple to be real. Honestly, when I first heard it, I thought it was a joke. A productivity trick from a self-help book, the kind of thing that sounds nice in theory and does nothing in your actual life. I was wrong. By the end of this video, you'll understand why motivation is wildly overrated, why forcing yourself to push through usually backfires, and how 2 minutes can somehow turn into hours of focused, almost effortless work. A few years ago, I spent an entire afternoon avoiding writing one email. Not a complicated one, not even an important one. I just had to reply to a coworker. Instead, I reorganized my desk. I made a coffee I didn't need. I checked my phone 11 times in 20 minutes. I know, because I counted later out of morbid curiosity. I watched 3 YouTube videos about a hobby I don't even have. I did everything except write that email. And when I finally sat down and made myself do it, the email took 4 minutes to write. 4 minutes, after nearly 4 hours of avoidance. Does that sound familiar to you? This is where it gets interesting, because what happened to me that afternoon isn't a personal flaw. It's basic behavioral psychology, and once you understand it, you'll never look at procrastination the same way again. Your brain doesn't actually see the task the way you write it on your list. When you write an email, or start the report, your brain doesn't process those neutral little words. It processes something closer to stress, uncertainty, and effort. It reads your simple task as a threat, and threats are things your brain is built to avoid. There's a concept behind this called cognitive load, and it's simpler than it sounds. The bigger a task appears in your mind, the more mental energy your brain has to spend just thinking about it, before you've even started. That mental spending is what creates the feeling of being overwhelmed. It's not that the work itself is difficult. It's that your brain is trying to process too many unknowns at once, and it would rather do almost anything else than sit with that discomfort. Picture yourself standing at the base of Mount Everest. Nobody looks up at that mountain and thinks, "I'm going to sprint to the summit today." Your brain would immediately reject that idea as impossible, and honestly, it should. But here's the thing. Your brain reacts to your Tuesday afternoon task list with that exact same sense of dread, even when the task is something as small as replying to a coworker. The size of the task in your imagination and the size of the task in reality are two very different things, and closing that gap is the entire secret to beating procrastination. You don't need to climb the mountain today. You only need to put on your shoes. So here's the solution, and it's ridiculously simple. It's called the 2-minute rule, and what's genuinely fascinating is that 2 completely different experts, coming from 2 completely different fields, arrived at almost the same conclusion, independently of each other. The first version comes from David Allen, the productivity consultant behind Getting Things Done. His rule is straightforward. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. Don't write it down. Don't add it to a list. Just do it right now. Replying to a text, hanging up your jacket, putting your keys away, answering a quick email. These things should never live on a to-do list. Why? Because every single time your eyes pass over that item on your list, your brain has to process it again. It rereads it, reevaluates it, and re-feels a small hit of guilt about not having done it yet. The longer your list, the more exhausted your brain becomes, and ironically, the less likely you are to actually get anything done. The second version comes from James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, and his angle is completely different, but it lands in almost the same place. His version isn't about finishing something in 2 minutes. It's about starting something in 2 minutes. You don't need to complete the task. You just need to show up. Want to read more? Don't commit to a chapter. Commit to 1 page. Want to start running? Don't commit to a 5-mile run. Commit to putting on your shoes. Want to meditate? Don't commit to 20 minutes of stillness. Commit to sitting down. Want to write? Don't commit to 2,000 words. Commit to 1 sentence. There's something deeper happening here than just a productivity hack. The moment you take that tiny action, even something as small as opening your laptop or putting on running shoes, your brain quietly starts to shift its self-image. It starts to think, I'm someone who shows up. And that shift in identity is far more powerful than any single completed task, because identity is what determines your behavior over the long run, not motivation, and definitely not willpower. But here's the part that still surprises people, even after they understand the rule. Why does something this small, something that takes less time than brushing your teeth, so often turn into an hour of genuinely focused work? Think back to physics class for a second, specifically Newton's first law. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Human behavior follows almost the exact same pattern. Starting is, without question, the hardest part of any task, but once you're actually moving, continuing is surprisingly easy. That initial resistance you feel isn't really resistance to the whole task. It's resistance to starting, and once that barrier is crossed, most of the difficulty disappears with it. There's also a chemical piece to this story. When you complete even a tiny action, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine. Not a flood of it, just a small, quiet reward. But that small reward is enough to create momentum for the next small step. This is the part most people get completely backwards. We assume we need motivation before we can start. In reality, motivation is usually the result of starting, not the cause of it. You don't wait to feel ready. You act your way into feeling ready. And then there's something called the Zeigarnik Effect, named after a psychologist who noticed something strange about waiters. Your brain has a genuine aversion to unfinished business. Once a task has technically begun, your mind holds on to it, almost like an open tab it refuses to close, until it's done. That's the actual reason 1 page of reading so often becomes 15 pages. It's not extra willpower. It's your brain refusing to let something stay half-finished once it's already started. Let's make this real, because understanding the psychology is one thing, but applying it is where the change actually happens. If you want to read more, the goal isn't, I'll read a chapter tonight. The goal is, I'll read 1 page. If you want to work out more, don't tell yourself, I'll work out for an hour. Tell yourself, I'll put on my shoes. If your kitchen is a disaster, don't say, I'll clean the whole kitchen. Say, I'll wash 1 plate. If you're avoiding that presentation, don't aim for, I'll finish the presentation. Aim for, I'll open PowerPoint. If you're job hunting and it feels paralyzing, don't say, I'll apply to 10 jobs today. Say, I'll open LinkedIn. And if you're a writer staring at a blank page, don't demand 2,000 words from yourself. Demand 1 sentence. Have you ever noticed how the hardest part of a workout is never the workout itself? It's putting on your shoes and walking out the door. Once you're moving, your body just keeps going. Think about that for a second, because it's genuinely a little heartbreaking when you sit with it. How many dreams have quietly disappeared over the years, not because the people chasing them lacked talent or intelligence, but simply because the first step felt impossible? How many books were never written, businesses never started, relationships never repaired, simply because starting felt like standing at the base of Everest? Success very rarely comes down to working harder than everyone else. Far more often, it comes down to making that first step so small your brain has no real reason left to resist it. Now, here's where most people mess this up, and I want to be honest about the biggest mistake I've seen, and honestly made myself. People turn the 2-minute rule into another way to punish themselves. They read 1 page and immediately feel guilty for not reading more. They put on their running shoes and feel like a failure if they don't run 5 miles. That completely misses the point. If today you only read one single page, that's a win. If today you only put on your shoes and stood in your driveway for 30 seconds before going back inside, that's still a win. This isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. And consistency beats intensity every single time, especially over months and years. So if you only remember one thing from this entire video, remember this. Scale it down to 2 minutes. Don't try to change your entire life today. Just make the first step so easy that saying no to it feels almost ridiculous. Here's a small challenge for you. When this video ends, don't open another one. Don't check TikTok. Don't glance at your email. Just pick one single thing you've been putting off, one task that's been quietly sitting in the back of your mind, and give it exactly 2 minutes. Not more, just 2 minutes. Then come back and tell me in the comments, what's your 2-minute task today? I read almost every comment on this channel, and I genuinely want to know what you're going to start.